As a therapist, I do a lot of work in helping clients with career planning and finding ways to increase their autonomy despite their challenges. This is especially true if somebody has a mood disorder or is neurodivergent with ADD or ASD disorders. So stick around because if you know anyone who has ADD, adult ADD or ADHD, you don't want to miss this episode because today we are talking with ADD career specialist Shell Mendelson. She has over 35 years with expertise in helping career coaching with this population. You can learn more about her work at passiontocareer.com. So, we're going to be talking about things like challenges to getting the job you want, how to create your own career, and also how to make your own accommodations. So, this is a really great episode. Be sure to share if you know anyone with ADD who's looking for more autonomy in their career. So, let's go. Hey, if you get value from this content and you haven't done so already, be sure to like and subscribe wherever you watch or listen, and be sure to subscribe to the MHD newsletter. That way you don't miss out on any new content as it's released or our live Q&As. Links are in the description below.
That was fine for a few years until it wasn't anymore. It was kind of like I saw the writing on the wall that the day-to-day began to become like an albatross for me. And the people I was working with were not ADHD, and I was very undiagnosed at that point. So the story of that is, I'll just skip to the end. It didn't end well.
So the self-awareness hadn't set in yet in terms of the alignment between you and your ideal career path. That gave you passion, that gave you energy. Welcome, Shell, to the Mental Health Toolbox podcast. So excited for you to be on today to share your wisdom around ADHD and career counseling.
I'm happy to be here, Patrick. Happy to be here.
So glad you could make it. As a therapist, I deal so much with clients who struggle with ADD, ADHD, and the friction that comes along with figuring out how to highlight your strengths and not your weaknesses. And so I've been really looking forward to this interview to pull some nuggets of wisdom from your 35 years of experience in this field and the wonderful work you're doing to help better educate my clients and other clinicians about some of the levers we can pull in helping to equip this population with making sure they're highlighting their strengths as they move forward toward their goals. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Excellent. So maybe you could share a little bit about your background and how you got into this work.
Ooh, how long of a story you want that to be?
So the cliff notes for now.
Yeah, cliff notes. It was, I've been involved in career coaching for 35 years and counseling. My degree is in vocational rehabilitation counseling, a master's that I got many years ago, probably before a lot of your listeners were born. And I started working in the field, working with people with disabilities who could no longer work in the jobs they were doing because of their disability on the job, their injuries, and tried to find them appropriate work. I did that for 10 years, and it was great for a period of time until I realized that I was working in a system I could no longer function in or wanted to function in, and it was becoming it was just becoming kind of this miserable system for me. It was something that I just wasn't literally enjoying, and for me, I have to enjoy my work. And I was always good about whenever something started to become over time challenging for me, in the sense that I wasn't enjoying it anymore, then I would always look for the next thing. What's the next thing that I can do that's going to be similar, take me to the next level, but not that work? So I found, I got trained by Richard Bowles, who wrote What Color is Your Parachute?
Oh, yes.
Yes. And I had his training. There were other career people there as well. I don't know how many of them actually used the training. But there were other career people in my training, and I stayed connected with him for many years. He died in 2017. His funeral was attended by a lot of the people I was trained who were part of some of the trainers.
Mm-hmm.
Incredible people, just incredible group. And the process itself allowed me to formulate a process for myself based on
Mm-hmm.
his work that I could use with my clients that was no longer encapsulated in a system. So it wasn't systematized anymore. It was more, I could sort of make it work for me the way I wanted it to, and I could individualize my process with people. And that was before my own diagnosis, way before that. So I worked with all kinds of people, but they were people who came to me because they wanted a career shift. They asked for it, they needed it. It was more of an individualized thing. Whereas in the workers' compensation system, people were basically forced to take vocational
Mm-hmm.
rehabilitation or not get their benefits, or something was tied to it. So
It's
it
kind of
was
mandated.
almost,
Yeah.
it was adversarial in a way. It
Mm-hmm.
was, yeah, and a lot of people were angry and they didn't want to have to do it, and I just got kind of tired of that. So being able to work with people who are truly motivated and committed to their own shift was a breath of fresh air for me. And as I was going through the process, I veered off course into what I call a mission, which I later defined as a mission, but at the time it just was veering off course into starting a company called Kids Art,
Mm-hmm.
which is a children's, international children's art franchise, which I woke up one morning with the name and the idea, and I proceeded to round up, as many of us people with ADHD are able to do. We can conceptualize something and then start the process of getting it going and really having fun doing that, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that
Mm-hmm.
was something I really enjoyed, pulling all the people together, pulling the ideas together. It took many years actually before we actually sold our first franchise, but the formation of it, the founding of it, was actually fun, stressful but fun. And I had, a lot to do with that, and I worked with somebody that I was friends with for many years who was an artist, and she did the art curriculum. And I enjoyed the idea of helping business people have a business. It was an after school art program, so they could have a business where they hire teachers and they can actually uh, work and make money in the field of art and
Mm-hmm.
business, basically. So that was fine for a few years until it wasn't anymore. It was kind of like I saw the writing on the wall that the day to day began to become like an albatross for me.
Mm-hmm.
And the people I was working with were not ADHD, and I was very undiagnosed at that point.
Okay.
So the story of that is, I'll just skip to the end. It didn't end well.
So the self-awareness hadn't set in yet in terms of the alignment between you and your ideal career path. That gave you passion. That gave you energy.
Well, yeah, I mean, I veered off course because I always loved doing the work that I'm doing now. So
Mm-hmm.
what happened was I veered off course because it was a mission. Nobody else was doing this franchise. My son was young, and it came out of being angry about art programs being taken out of the school, which is how a lot of
Mm-hmm.
companies are formed, out of
Mm-hmm.
anger, because
Absolutely.
something,
Passion, anger. Yeah.
yeah, passion slash
Gaps.
anger. But I just didn't know when to quit. I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have a plan B. So when my time was up, basically, in terms of my enthusiasm and any other element of enjoyment that I had doing that was up, I felt like trapped, basically.
Mm-hmm.
So it didn't end well. And without going into a lot of detail about it, it just didn't. I got out of it, I ended it, but it wasn't fun. It wasn't a fun ending. And it was traumatizing, in fact, very traumatizing for me, because I was with other people who were neurotypical and I was yet to be diagnosed, and didn't see my part in the way things happened, because I just thought things were the way they were and nobody was cooperating. And the way a lot of us think before we're diagnosed was happening. So when I finally went back to doing the career coaching, it was like a huge weight had been lifted off my shoulder, and I was now back doing what I loved, and it felt like a breath of fresh air, literally. And
How
I
long was that? How long was that period where you had this franchise project before you returned back to the career coaching?
probably 8 years, 9 years.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about it like it's just this blip, but that's a huge chunk of your life,
It was a
right?
huge chunk of my life. And the whole time, I wasn't aware of the difference between it being a mission and my life's work.
Hmm.
Okay, so my life's work is the work I'm doing now. Because you never get tired. You always find new ways to continue doing this. But with that, I just wanted it to end.
Hmm.
It should have had a beginning, middle, and an end. And to me, that is my, just to kind of go ahead a little bit here, my definition of life purpose is more of a theme for your life, an overall arching theme, and your purpose or a mission is something that you would do like a project or something that has a beginning, a middle, and end,
Hmm.
like Mission Impossible. If you choose
Hmm.
this to accept this
I
mission,
like
kind
that.
of
I love
thing.
that analogy. Yes,
Yeah. if you
everybody can
choose
relate. Yep.
if you choose to accept this mission, if I had had it to begin with, my life would have been a lot better. I think a lot of things would have turned out differently, but I didn't formulate it until after I had the experience. So now I can teach it to other people. I could share my perceptions or my what I learned from that process with other people. So I then started working again with clients, and it was a slow climb back into working. And then I actually, at the same time as I was ending the stint with kids art, literally crawling to the shelf where somebody had sent me a book on ADHD 2 years before, and I quietly shoved it into a drawer and
Mm.
thumbs down said, "Who are you know?" I thought I was a little insulted, like, "What?
Hmm.
What do you mean?" I didn't open it. I had no idea that ADHD existed for adults. I just didn't understand until I finally realized that something was really wrong because I really hit rock bottom at that point. And when I went crawling over and I picked up that book and I opened it, of course, there are checklists in there.
Hmm.
And everything I read was light bulb, light bulb, light bulb, as many of us have when we finally get it that we're not alone and we're not crazy. And other people share the same kind of um, diagnosis or whatever.
Hmm.
At that time, it was not clear to me, except for reading it, I could relate to everything in it. I finally went and got the diagnosis, and the nurse practitioner who gave me the diagnosis basically said, "You're off the charts." So am I. She was also ADHD.
Hmm.
And it helped me so much just to gain that understanding of myself and be able to sort of have a framework that I could now work within, learn to manage from, get therapy and treatment for all of those things, right?
Yeah, it seems like it'd be very, very important, like you said, to have a framework so you know what you're dealing with, and then you can,
Exactly.
as a career coach, you're probably your wheels are already turning. How can I leverage this? How can I work with this system in order to get what I want, what I need from life, as opposed to looking at it as a handicap, right?
Yeah, and I was always working before that. I was working with the general population until I had the diagnosis, and I said, "Oh my gosh, I've just got to work with people with ADHD like me, and
Mm.
really start because how many people? There's something at the time it was like 4% of the population. That's a ginormous number of people
Yeah.
out there. It's probably more now, but at the time when I was diagnosed, which is close to 14 or 15 years ago,
Hmm.
it was still not a, yeah, I don't think there was as much information out at that point, even then. Books were out, there was information, but not like it is now. So I was able to finally, like I said, get the diagnosis, decide on my audience was going to be people with ADHD, and I have loved it. It made such a difference when I did that, just in my own enjoyment of the work I do, just me just liking what I do even more than I did already. And I began the process of tweaking the parachute system for people with ADHD, creating graphic documents that are that went beyond the book, did a lot of stuff that the book did not address to help sort of fill in the blanks for people with ADHD. I cherry picked quite a bit of it. I still do. I we still use that, the workbook that's associated with it, but it's
Hmm.
very much cherry picked, and all the documents that I created up to that point are also part of what I do as well. So, um, anyway, that's kind of where things are now as far as Oh, and I formed the master class about 3 years ago.
Hmm.
So I started moving away from individual coaching in the beginning and made the master class the baseline for what I do, because it covered pretty much everything I did individually, only more on steroids, right?
Okay. Okay.
But with other people, with a more of a community effort, and people going through an individual process with support, feedback, and like being able to interact with others who are going through almost the same thing with their ADD. Like they may have completely different jobs, completely different backgrounds, different educations, but the one thing they have in common is the ADHD and how that's impacted them over
Hmm.
the years in terms of their decision making and all of it. The whole career direction process. Very often for people with ADHD, it takes a different, well, like it's very similar to other people in that a lot of people fall into their jobs. And that's true also for people with ADHD. But I think there's a lot of shiny object stuff that goes on in terms of
Hmm.
training. Like maybe I'll try this, I'll try that, I'll try this, and job hopping. And there's other things that come, feeling like you need to fit into a situation when you're not, a square peg in a round hole,
Hmm.
and trying to fit in and always falling short and not quite being able ever to quite get there, and trying to make it up as you go along, fake it till you make it, and then still
Right.
not make it. Anyway, I could go on forever about
Yeah.
that, but that's.
Before we dive deeper, I'm curious if you could just give us a for any of those watching or listening, if they're not familiar with that book, what color is your parachute? Can you kind of just explain
Yes.
briefly what that's about? Because that
Uh,
seems to be a big influence on the work you do.
oh, very much. Absolutely. Yeah, what colors your parachute is a process of identifying your career direction by using what's called the flower model, which has all the elements of what makes up your ideal work. And that breaking, I think what the reason I was attracted to it was because it breaks everything down. And I instinctively am opposed to giving assessments. That's just my instinct, and it has been from the very beginning, way before I was diagnosed.
Hmm.
And Richard Bowles was the same way. I would go to conferences, counselor conferences, and he would be the keynote speaker, and he would always talk, about how it's a real personal self-reflective process versus assessments that compare yourself with other people. The answers that you write down, first of all, they aren't always the right questions to begin with. And second of all, they compare you with other people who might answer similarly, but they're not you. So they don't
Hmm.
allow you to like really take the deep dive and really authentically say, this is who I am. This is what is important to me on every level, personally, not compared with anyone else. And that was what really I loved about Parachute. And I've been like a follower, probably one of the few people out there. I certainly, no one else I don't think is doing the ADHD version of it,
Hmm.
but I don't know how many people are out there are very much following Parachute the way I am. Maybe other people are. I don't know who they are. Speak up if you are.
Yeah, please
Um,
comment wherever you're
yeah,
watching or listening
comment
to
if
this.
you
Let us
are.
know. Yeah.
I think some people use it, but I don't think they don't have. I have tweaked it and uh, cut and sliced it and put it back together and done all kinds of things with it. And what's really nice is that I still speak with his wife, and she said to me at one point, "You are carrying on Dick's message."
What an honor. Yeah.
Yeah, maybe it's just real, and she knows I am doing the book for ADHD adults that's inspired by Parachute.
Now you attended his funeral?
Yes, I
Wow.
did. And one of
That's
my
a
clients came with me actually,
wow.
who I've been working with for a while. Yes, and Daniel Perot was there. He he's referenced in his book. I don't know if he
Hmm.
still is, but he used to be referenced, and he was in at the training. And so I was trained by him as well in some of his processes. So yeah, I learned so many different processes that I was able to re take apart and put back together for people with ADHD, which means breaking it down. So the one thing I wanted to say about the flowers, it breaks it down, and our brains as people with ADHD require that we break things down, and we it becomes simplified in a way that we can digest the information. And we like graphics, we like things, bigger text,
Hmm.
two sentences versus a whole paragraph, even
Hmm.
though I don't know about you, but I tend to write in big paragraphs, but I like to read things
Right.
that are broken up.
Yes, don't we all? Yes.
Yeah. So I don't really adhere to what I like to read that much when I write. But so, yeah, that's kind of, I don't know if that answers your question.
Oh yeah,
That,
absolutely. Thank you. I can tell by your passion when you talk about that the work
yeah.
and that what you've learned from the author and the book, and it's just definitely it's touched you, and you've obviously, to the it touched you to the point where you attended the author's funeral, and that's led to other connections and networks,
Yes.
and so I didn't want to drive past that, and just
Oh,
assume
okay.
that everybody
Yeah.
knows the reference point, because I think it's important to understand,
Uh-huh.
what has influenced this work for you and why, to at what level, so anyone listening now is going to go and look at the flower bottle, right? That's your homework assignment, everybody.
Yeah. I do want to, well, when we get to it, I want to talk about the book and how I've recreated the flower to be the planets.
Hmm.
So it's no longer a flower for people with ADHD, it's the planets and the career galaxy. So
Okay.
I didn't want to take that model and make it, it wasn't mine to
Right.
take,
Right.
but it's inspired by that.
Hmm.
So,
As everything great is inspired by something else great. I mean,
right,
that's the way it works.
exactly.
Absolutely. Nothing's new under the sun, as they say.
So the planets thing will be coming out, and people will, this was a recommendation of people, my students, what would be another model,
Hmm.
where you could have balls where you could put information in and
Hmm.
write information in. And the first thing I had was stepping stones, and then I had a couple of other things, but then somebody said planets, and then the whole class chimed in and said planets, solar system,
Hmm.
galaxy. And every time I bring that up, all my clients just love that idea.
Oh, see,
It's,
that's the best way to create something, right? Is to
yeah,
create it from, the mouth, the minds of your audience, of the
yes,
students, because then it's of the utmost value to them, right?
yes,
And everyone that, moving forward. So
yep.
good job on that. Good job.
Thank you.
Yeah. So you cover a lot of, I mean, this in this world of career coaching adults with ADHD. What are some of the biggest hurdles that you come across, do you think? And what are some of the strategies for addressing those?
The biggest hurdles in terms of working with people, or
That you find people who are, even if they're, self-identified, as you say, self-motivated, like what are some of the challenges they bring to you that you help them kind of work through?
they're generally when they come to me, they there's very similar stories. And again, I like to say it doesn't matter how old you are. It doesn't matter how much education you've had. It doesn't matter what background you have. I have had people with double PhDs. I have
Mm.
had people, who are working people who haven't, you know, most people have have completed high school, but I mean, I'm sure I had one or two that hadn't. So education does not matter. What matters is coming to understand that whatever you were trying to do to make this decision hasn't been working. So that things like job hopping, things like d- landing in jobs that they hadn't thought about, they just sort of like fell, the quote term I'm sure you've heard, I fell into this position.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing's kind of led to another versus them making a very serious, systematic choice, looking at all the elements that they need to look at. And at some point, that's going to fall apart. It might be later on where they can, like I say, fake it till you make it kind of thing for a
Mm-hmm.
while.
Mm-hmm.
And then things do start falling apart. So they come to me at that point, maybe just before or during the falling apart, where they're making a lot of mistakes. They're getting called on the carpet. They're just not happy anymore. They can't get up in the morning and feel anything for what they're doing. And a lot of people with ADHD are very purpose driven, so they don't have that feeling of purpose in what they're doing. They're just missing the elements of what it takes to really enjoy doing your work. And people with ADHD, we have interest. Our brains are interest based. They're wired to be interest based.
Mm.
So you hear things like, yeah, when they really like something, they can just dive in and hyper focus and really. But it kind of has to be that way with the work you do too. Maybe to not that extent all the time, but there has to be a generalized enjoyment and interest in what you're doing that um, will cover all the bases of what makes up the work, the ideal work. Like very much the conditions, and I'll just tell you briefly what those are. Like the skills that you're using, the people you're working with, the working conditions are a
Mm-hmm.
huge part of it. What your salary, the money does make a difference, and opportunities to make money is makes a difference. That's true for pretty much everybody. All these things are true for pretty much everyone, but this is more just kind of breaking down the process that and then I tweak each one of those things more for people with ADHD. So another one is the geographical area, and then the life purpose, your
Mm.
purpose, which very often it seems like one of those catchwords terms, life purpose. Most people have heard it. Many people will say, I have no clue what my purpose is. But
Mm-hmm.
when you go through this process, it becomes something that is organically kind of rises to the top and starts to become clearer when you finally identified all these and you go, yeah, this is what I'm really meant to do.
Mm.
And this is what I meant to bring to the world if I extend that further, maybe in a more generic kind of way.
So it's a discovery process, but it sounds like
Yeah.
you're in your framework, you're kind of finding these competing values and
Yeah.
then kind of putting them in order of priority, right? In order
Yes.
to gain more clarity and how they can move forward toward these
Yeah.
things and then
Mhm.
create a career by design as opposed to something that they just landed in, right?
Yes, and it's very nuanced. It's not as simple as people think when you're getting into it. Uh, there's a lot of things that from the outside that come in. So when I work with people, I put them in what I call the career bubble,
Mm-hmm.
which means I ask them not to talk to anybody, including their spouse or their significant other or friends, family, anyone about what they're coming up with during the 8-week process.
Mm.
So that they have the total freedom to explore everything before they pull it in and start to see what I call the cream rising to the top
Mm.
of what's making the most sense for them, which doesn't always look anything like what people around them think it should look like. It may have elements of that, but it's generally more than one thing. It's usually a few things, ideas and topics and things coming together that start to create like, I could do this. These are some things that I can be thinking about. And then they start talking to people who are doing similar things and getting a more realistic perspective on all that. So it's kind of like first it has to be generalized almost anything and everything that I want to look at or that I've ever thought about looking at. And very often things from the past will come up, things from childhood will come up, all kinds of things will start to come up that have been virtually squelched their
Hmm.
entire lives. Maybe not all of it, but for a good part of it, it will reappear very often and take the form of something that they, oh, you know what? I always wanted to learn more about this thing, but I just
Hmm.
never explored it because it wouldn't make any sense or it's not going to make me any money or so and so said I shouldn't do it or what will so and so think. So remember I talked about the safekeeping self.
Yes, yes. Let's learn more about that.
So that is where the safekeeping self gets discussed early on because that is the part of us that wants to adhere to the status quo,
Hmm.
right? Just to go back to the same old. Like I can't, I won't, I shouldn't put up resistance to
Right.
taking steps, even the most insignificant, well, not insignificant, but I'll call it simple step of Googling something,
Hmm.
or looking it up, uh, looking up what the definition of this potential idea could be, or looking into just the idea itself. It's like the whole voices from beyond speaking to us.
Hmm.
That's the safekeeping self. Every time you start to doubt yourself, every time you and I say you can't rig this system. You cannot rig this system to be what you think other people want it to be for you. That's not gonna. It will never ever
Right.
work.
Right.
And so becoming aware of that becomes a big part of what we do in the process. And just the first time you notice it rearing its ugly head, as I say, that's the breakthrough right there, right? The first time you notice it's happening when it's happening.
So, that might look like for someone is if they struggle in this area, they struggle with giving themselves permission to explore
Yeah,
the things that they know speak to them, their visions, their dreams, right?
exactly.
Their dream life, right? So many times we get that feedback from our environment. No, who are you to think that you can do this or you can do that? Just get with the program. What makes you
Yeah.
special, right?
Good
All
angel,
this,
bad angel, I call
yeah,
it.
right. And so you're saying that can even
Yeah.
prevent somebody from exploring, like
Just
something as
explore,
simple as
just,
Google, like
yeah,
I don't know,
exactly.
passive income, or
Something.
X, Y,
Yeah.
or Z, or starting your own business, right? Just dipping your toe in the water of getting some information can sometimes immediately summon that negative voice or the devil on the shoulder, the devil's advocate saying, "What, why even bother looking? You're just going
Yeah.
to depress yourself."
So
Right?
a good example, exactly. Why even bother looking? That happens. That's the safekeeping self right there. And so that's why I say don't talk to anyone because all you need is one side eye. All you need is one person saying, "Have you thought of da da da?" or a heavy sigh of some kind.
Mm.
You know what I'm talking about,
Oh, for
right?
sure.
Everybody knows what I'm talking about,
Hmm.
which can literally derail you. And so that is one of the actual policies slash rules of the class is to keep all this information only available to each other so you can explore it fully and from the largest possible space and bring it down to some actual possibilities at some point.
I love
um,
this concept because I can't
yeah.
tell you how many times people get excited about an idea, and the first thing they do is tell their loved ones
Ooh. Yeah.
about this idea, and then here comes maybe it's coming from a place of love, right? But it's kind of like, they talk you back down, right?
Yeah.
Because they're like, what if this, what if that, or that's not rational, or and maybe it's done with good intention, but sometimes that feedback can then derail or
Derail. Yeah.
halt that moment of inspiration. Like you said, that comes from maybe
Yeah.
these ideas, these passions come from the beyond, but they're oftentimes fleeting, right? And they're easily squashed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or for some people like me, when I get an idea, it doesn't go away. And like the whole idea for kids art just would not go away. And I mean, it sat with me for years before I
Mm.
actually woke up one morning with the name, the concept, and if somebody's got to do it, I guess it has to be me, right?
Right.
And it wasn't an ego thing. It was like, who the hell else is doing this? Somebody's got to
Hmm.
do it. So I think there are people listening who know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Sometimes you
Yeah.
get these ideas that people are not going to get done unless you do them. And either you can go with it and get excited about that, or you can just sit on it. I'm glad I got excited and went with it, even though it didn't go the way I wanted, in the end. Well, had I known what I know now, I would have had a plan B backup for, beginning, middle, and end to it. Whereas I didn't have that. So that's the whole thing when I talk about mission with people, kind of backtracking a little bit. But yeah, the whole idea that you get you have to allow yourself the a wide berth to
Mm.
explore a lot of different things that may seem crazy, but you've thought about them before. If you're
Yeah.
real with yourself,
Right.
you may have like thought about them as a kid, or they're just things that, and you squished them down because you had to be practical and you had to get a job that was going to pay you a certain amount of money. And then you're going to have to work in the corporate world that allowed you to grow or to get promotions and to make more money. Or I don't know, everybody has different reasons. Not everyone follows that particular trajectory,
Hmm.
but it happens a lot. And then you have the family and you have the obligations and you have all the other things. But the thing is with ADHD, at some point it catches up to you and you can no longer deny that you've got to take some steps to really start looking at the alternatives that are going to fit you more. And I always tell people that if you're unhappy in the work you do and you're not doing well for whatever reason, it's not you. You're just in the wrong job.
Hmm.
You're in the wrong career. It's not you personally. So let go of that one. That is not about who you are. Some
Right.
people need to hear that. They don't really understand and they take it on thinking there is something wrong with them.
Right.
So not everybody adheres to that, but some people do. And I just want to clarify that it is not you. You are just in the wrong job. And to find out what that fit is means making a commitment to whatever that process, the process I use is a deep dive and it does require, it's more nuanced. It's structured yet nuanced. So I have the structure for it, but it's also going to allow you to explore some of the nuances and how to put those things together.
Absolutely, because I feel like, that whole writer's block thing, the
Yeah.
blank page, and people get very overwhelmed. I would get overwhelmed with thinking about my alternatives, my options,
Uh
and
huh.
not having a guide or a structure
Right.
to help me with my approach, right? Because otherwise, we spend all of our time and energy on what?
Yeah.
Our 9 to 5, the mold
Yeah.
that we're in,
Yeah.
our obligations, and then how much time do we allow ourselves to explore with ideas of alternatives and other ways of being, other ways of living. And sometimes when we are given that inspiration, we're given the encouragement to think outside the box. It's kind of like staring at a blank page. I might get excited at first, but when we get to the keyboard, it's kind of like, deer in the headlights. It's like, where do I start?
Well, this is the answer to that. That's where I fill in the gaps, and that's where I'm very proud to say that it's taken me many years to develop, the process for people with ADHD to do that. But that I tell people, look, if you're even thinking about it, you need to just let go and be fully committed.
Hmm.
You need to. You don't have to. You're going to get the help to let go the rest of the way while you're in there, but to get to the point where you're ready to make that shift, there needs to be a certain amount of commitment
Hmm.
to going into the process of finally getting it right, which is not an open and shut case. There's nuance. Like I said, there is nuance to it. So,
Absolutely. So two
yeah.
definite camps, right? Camp one is I know this isn't the life I want,
Yeah.
but I don't know what that is.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the other camp that says I have this nagging passion, this desire to do X, Y, or Z, but I am having trouble giving myself permission to do it.
Yes. That's a big
Right.
one.
Yeah.
That's usually that's it in a nutshell, really. Giving yourself permission to do it. And also getting the buy-in from the people around you to
Mm-hmm.
do it and to not share with them what you're doing while you're doing it.
Yeah.
That's a tough one. Although for many people when they hear that, I almost hear a collective sigh of relief.
There's validation there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, most people are relieved, and it's like I say, just blame it on your coach. Just say, that's the rule. Can't do it. They can call me, they can scream at me all they want, but
Right.
yeah.
I love it. I always tell my clients that too. I'm like, blame it on your therapist. Tell them it's your homework.
It's your homework.
Put it on
Exactly.
me. Yeah,
Exactly.
absolutely.
So for therapists, I love it when people are working with therapists because stuff will come up. I mean, there's so much fodder for therapy that comes up in this.
Right.
And I'm like, "Oh, I'm so glad you have somebody to talk to about some of these things that are coming up for
Right.
you."
Like you said, it is very nuanced, right? There's
Yes.
so many components to
Yeah.
the challenges, the hurdles, the pitfalls that we
And there's so much
face.
so
Yeah.
much fear, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, people go still are they're dealing with, if I do this, if I say this, it's gonna mean this. I'm gonna have to live in poverty, or they
Mm-hmm.
make up stuff in their head about what it's supposed to be, or what if they actually come to terms with who they are.
Right. These assumptions. Yeah.
These assumptions, and it just keeps you in this place where you just never move forward, you
Well, it
know?
prevents you from fact finding, right?
Exactly, even fact
Yeah.
finding, just simple stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Status quo.
Yep. Yep. This, you know,
Yeah.
this must be all there is. Yeah.
This must be all there is. Sounds like a song.
Huh, right. Wow. So I know we've covered a lot. There's a lot more we can cover, and I'm curious. You talk about in your work,
Yeah.
that ADHD adults sometimes struggle with making the best decisions for them. And can you elaborate on that just a little? I know we've touched on it with
Uh,
the self keeping self,
you mean
safekeeping
before
self.
they get to me, before I
Yeah,
see
before they
them?
get to you.
Yeah, I think, like I said, I think people very often will fall into the same patterns of just kind of going with the flow and falling into things. And if they got trained to do one thing, just okay, I have the skills to do that, so I can get this job that fits with, fill in the blank. Um, it fits a job description, and that kind of takes me into the beggar versus
Hmm.
job creator thing. So people who take jobs because they have to, those are job beggars, and very often employers actually can see through that, and they can
Oh, for
see that
sure.
you're desperate,
Mm-hmm.
right? And you still may be able to fit the bill for them. You still may be able to tick all the job description items off.
Mm-hmm.
However, when you come in knowing what you want, and you can articulate what you want, and you can have a certain conversation with them that puts you more in the driver's seat of letting them know right off the bat that you're looking for the best fit for yourself. And
Mm-hmm.
here's what I have to offer. And this is why I'm applying for this position now. Basically, without saying it, you prove to me that it's the right one for me. That is the position you want to be in. And when you know what you want, you can articulate it. You can say, these are the conditions under which I thrive, in which I will be more productive. I will focus and get the things done that you need me to get done, that I am, because I'm happy doing them. uh, and you can decide whether you want to say something like that, but you basically will have more control over the interview in general.
I love it. I love it definitely. And like I've always heard that, people can smell desperation. It's
They
kind of
can
like
smell
when you're
it.
dating
Yeah.
someone, you're always more attractive than when you're single.
Yeah. But usually people who know what they want,
Right.
they're in a much better position no
Yeah.
matter what it is. It's like, and when you ask, say, 100 people what they want in their job or career, how many people are going to be able to articulate that?
Mm-hmm.
Seriously.
Absolutely.
Not very many,
No.
very few.
Right. So it comes down to that confidence piece and knowing what you want, knowing what you're about, knowing
Yeah,
even your own blind spots and your strengths and what you want to emphasize, right?
exactly. Exactly. And that's what this helps clarify
Mm-hmm.
so that all when you have your roadmap, which is called the flower and will be called the planets at some point, you have that information to use to decide, sift and sort
Mm-hmm.
opportunities that come your way, or any opportunity that you're looking for. Is this right for me? And you have this information already, so you can say, nope, not this one. This one looks like a possibility. And that's the
Right.
position you want to be in,
Yeah.
right?
Absolutely. And that probably
Yeah.
speaks to that whole concept of self-accommodation that you talk
Oh,
about,
yeah.
right?
Yes.
Sounds like a
And
first
that,
step in that, like knowing what it is you need, right?
yes. And we get very detailed. It's a very detailed process. It's not just, uh, should I get this kind of chair, or this kind of chair, or should I, it's really, it gets a lot more detailed into what are all the different elements you're in your environment and the kind of instruction you're getting, the culture, all the different aspects, elements that actually help you thrive. Those are the conditions, the physical conditions and the non-physical ones, which are culture is one of them. Diversity is another one. If that's important to you, if certain things are important to you, like the structure of the organization, that kind of thing,
Mm-hmm.
those things have to be really identified up front. And when you have a really clear, detailed understanding of what those are, it makes it much easier to have that conversation because first of all, you come in knowing what you want and you're a better candidate right away. And that very often employers are going to go, what can we do to serve you? That's how it was for me when I finally started working in the field that I was supposed to be in.
Mm.
Was I could get away with so much that the corporation said was a no-no. I mean, filling out these stupid forms. I just said, nope, not going to do that. But I'll bring clients in and I'll get them going and I'll do what I'm supposed to be doing.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when they know that you have that to offer there. They do more to accommodate you.
Right, because you highlight your value, right?
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Highlight your value, then
Yeah.
the employer isn't as prone to overlook that, right? Because you're highlighting it, and sometimes, like you said, they'll give you grace. And it seems like you could
Yeah.
also apply this to yourself, like even if you're geared towards self-employment, making sure that you are, since if even if you're your own boss, that you
You have
are
to still know what
you
what the best
right.
accommodations
You
are.
still have to set yourself
Yeah.
up for success, right?
I am sitting in where I want to be. I am looking out the window and watching squirrels and things go by as I'm talking to you that these things are important to me.
Mm-hmm.
These things are important to me. I don't know. I have to have the right size desk. I have to have the right chair. I have to have my dog sitting next to me. These
Mm-hmm.
things are important to me.
Right.
Now, they may not be important to somebody else, but I know what's important to me. And you really need to get some clarity around that. Everybody needs to have clarity around that. So,
Absolutely. Well
yeah,
said. I don't think that can be emphasized enough.
yeah,
You know, I
yeah, yeah.
I know my mental health is in a much better space and I'm much more productive. I've got my dog sleeping on the floor behind me right here,
The
as you can see.
dog, isn't the dog like, I mean, mine's right there.
Yeah, I've got two actually. I've got a little one and a big one right here.
I know, I've got a little one
They're my
who's
office buddies.
you sound like me. I have a little one who's downstairs, but she yaps kind of, so I put her in her little, sleep nest, I call it, for a couple of hours, and she stays quiet, and she sleeps, and then she comes out and starts going crazy. That's
Yeah.
what
Yeah, my
happens.
big one Oliver, he'll if I don't let him in the office when I'm doing my podcasting or anything, then he'll lay outside the door and he'll whine the whole time as he wants to be in.
That's exact we have the same dog. It's the same thing.
It's funny, but I totally get it. I mean, we have a butterfly garden. That was our pandemic project, and we dug up some of the grass, and it started with one little milkweed plant, and it's turned into like a whole way station to save the monarch
Oh
butterflies. And
God,
so
I
our
love that.
yeah, so it's nice because I look up my window, much like you, and
Yeah.
I've got the butterflies of every kind, flying around
Yeah.
out there, and it's really therapeutic, and I do
Oh
I do
my
better I do
gosh.
better work that way, you
I
know.
was watching hummingbirds go by when we were talking.
Yeah, see, so
Seriously.
I don't think that can be emphasized enough. Your workspace and your mental space are
Your
so
workspace and your
correlated.
mental
Yeah.
space. And with ADHD, I mean, I know for neurotypical people, it's important, but for people with ADHD, with all these, some people have sensory issues,
Hmm.
there's a lot of, somebody had a word for the sensory thing, and I can't remember what it was. I was on a like an autistic slash ADHD podcast, and she had this term. Oh, I feel terrible. I can't remember what it is, but it's a sensory aspect that we need to really get clarity on, and that does come into that whole um, idea of self accommodation.
Yeah,
So yeah,
absolutely. So you're doing wonderful work. You have your book in the
yes,
oven. It's going to be done soon.
the book in the oven. It's
Bacon.
currently in it's currently in editing and formatting. I have
Cool.
the book cover. I have the printer. It's going to be spiral bound for people with ADHD so they can lie the book flat and they can write in it.
Hmm.
There's going to be lots of uh, exercises that you can actually just write right in. Um, and it's going to be in color. Mostly every single page has color, lots of
Hmm.
graphics, lots of uh, cool stuff to break things down. My insights that I've gained over the years that I'm pretty transparent about in the book, and have hopefully it will help people to see themselves. And it's also, if I may say, perfect for everybody, even neurotypical people. If you don't have to read about, the ADHD part, just do the work, do the steps, and it's probably easier than any way possible to get that information for people
Wow.
with it.
And I'm going to grab myself a copy. And I really appreciate your
Yeah,
attention to detail and taking
yeah,
into consideration even the spiral bound. I've always preferred that because I really, that's why one of the reasons I have an aversion to paper and journals is I hate like having to fold half the thing and write. And yeah,
yeah.
just,
Well,
I
it's
don't know.
coming at us at a great cost because doing color and spiral bound,
Oh, I
I
know.
can't upload it to the KDP, which is the Amazon.
Hmm.
So I cannot do the typical Amazon. So people are going to have to find me. I'm going to have different ways for them to find me it'll be on my website, mostly, but, so it's going to be more costly to have printed, but I have to do it. You have to
Sure,
do it for
quality first. You want
the
it to be
quality.
used, not just
Yeah.
collect dust on a shelf somewhere. That doesn't do
It,
anybody any good.
I have to do it
Yeah.
for what's the point of even doing it if you're not going to do it the right way?
Yeah.
And yeah, so I'm learning a lot. This is the first time I've ever done anything like this, and I'm not sacrificing anything to have it happen. Other than the cost is going to be a lot more, but
I appreciate that.
that's
I mean,
yeah,
again, if people pay, they pay attention, and then if
yeah,
it's quality, they're going to use it. So I appreciate the work you're doing, and especially like you said, because it's not just about the ADHD population. It's that you are bringing 35 years,
yes,
a wealth of experience of career
yes,
coaching, and
yeah,
boiling that 35 years down into a book, which is why I love books, because you can digest a
yeah.
decade of somebody's knowledge in a matter of hours, and that is just priceless. So one of the
Thank
reasons
you
I
for
love
saying
books.
that. Thank you
Yeah.
for saying that's the first time anyone's ever said you've taken 35 years, and yeah, that's exactly what it is. I guess, for me, I just take it for granted, but now I'm starting to realize that this is my knowledge accumulated over the years that I have finally laid out there. And it became very apparent to me that it had to be done,
Mhm.
because the fifth edition that I used of the workbook in my class was I didn't like the sixth edition after After Richard Bowles died in 2017, I had a hard time with the editions following. It's not that they
Mm-hmm.
weren't good, they just weren't, I didn't connect with them anymore. And so the fifth edition is like really not that easy to get. It's not as, and then I said, oh my gosh, the universe is telling me something. I've
Oh,
got to
for
like,
sure. Right?
I've got to do something finally. And I always knew I had to do this. And
I've always heard that said if
yeah,
something's bothering you, then that's the direction you need to move
that
to fill the
is.
gap. Yeah,
And I want it to
absolutely.
be something that's widespread and
Mm-hmm.
available in high schools and colleges. And uh, I want it to be out there for people to use and really experience, because not everyone can take the class, but you can work in groups together, and teachers can, you know, it's easy to follow, so they could actually create, their own class with it.
Yeah.
I'm going to be training at some point, training people to teach it, but I basically, it's pretty simple. So it's simply, it's laid out so that you can do that, right?
It's great. That's great. I love it. I
Yeah.
can't wait to see it.
Thank you.
Yeah, and then when I do some lives, I do lives about every week on here. On StreamYard, I can do giveaways. So anybody in the comments, so it can pick people at random. So I'll just put the name of your book there, and I can always send it to somebody through wherever. So that'd be cool if anybody's interested. Make sure you make the lives here, and I might give you a copy when it's
Well,
ready.
you'll see the cut. I'll send you the cover so you can at least show the cover to people.
That's cool. Yeah, I'll definitely include the cover on the intro once this is posted.
Yeah.
And I'll put everything in the description as always in the show notes so you're easy to find. And
Thank
speaking
you.
of which, this is your site, yes?
That's my site.
All right, passion2career.com.
Yes, well, actually, you can find me several ways. It's careercoachingmichelle.com, passion2career.com. Actually, whatcolorsyourparachute.com
Oh, good for
is
you.
another way to
Okay.
find. I actually purchased it because it was up for sale, and I said
Oh,
I don't
okay.
want some rando
Right.
purchasing it for a car,
Oh, that's thoughtful of you.
parts place or something like that. So
Right?
I grabbed it. And there's a couple of other ones, but those are the main ones. Career Coaching Michelle is probably the easiest one to remember.
Nice. Great sites. Um, very easy on the eyes. I'm
There's
sure
a
that's
little
intentional.
video you can watch on
Oh,
the
the video,
class.
right?
And
Cool.
then if you click that little red button on the right where it says learn more, what does it say?
Read more?
Read more. That goes to the masterclass details right there.
Oh, excellent. I love it.
Yeah.
Very good.
So I change it up every time there's a new class coming. And there's a place you can click to right on there. It says masterclass description. You can get the PDF
Oh, very
description.
cool. All right. And
Yeah.
that's a live Q&A with you or?
No, it's just a description. But there's a lot of information there. I mean, there's tons of testimonials that are, when you scroll all the way to the bottom, you'll read some as you go along. You scroll all the way to the bottom, and then it'll say more testimonials, and
Oh, I
then there'll be a
gotcha.
ton more.
Yeah. Very cool. All right.
Yeah.
I love it. Testimonials are great. It doesn't, there's
You
the
can
proof in the
see
pudding. So,
they're not
yeah.
short. People write
No,
their little
excellent.
stories in there.
I love it.
Yeah.
Good stuff. Well, thank you, Shell. I
Thank you for
love,
showing all that.
of
That's great.
course. Yes. I'm all about seeing, I'm a very visual person.
Yes, me
So,
too. I wish more people did that. Yeah, I love
I
that.
like to I do pride myself in trying to be a good host and make sure that the wonderful work you're doing is being highlighted because that's what this show's all about
Well, Patrick,
is
you're a delightful
tools.
host.
Oh,
You're a
thank you so
delightful
much, and
host.
I enjoy
Really nice.
these chats and being able to provide more tools and resources to the mental health community. This is one area I wish there was more resources, and I've always been a fan of career coaching. I work alongside some career coaches at my
Yes.
clinic, and just the work they do. I just coming from a background where I had zero direction,
Yeah.
guidance in that area, and knowing what I know now, I
Yeah.
know if I had known more than I did when I was starting
Yes.
off, that I would have been light years ahead. Just having a roadmap,
I
and
wish
stuff like
that's
that.
why I wish they would, they get it in the high schools. So, because high
Likewise.
school kids need to go through this kind of a
Oh,
process.
that was my favorite role in my first
Yeah.
year internship in grad school was working at a K through 12 school and working with the high schoolers who were preparing like to graduate and sitting with them and helping them understand things like the Occupational Outlook Handbook, which when I started college was like this thick in the library.
I used to
Now,
drag that thing around along with, remember the Dictionary of Occupational
yes,
Titles?
right,
I would take those
yeah,
2 books to people's houses and they weighed about 10 pounds. And now it's all now it's
online, yes,
ONET and Occupational Outlook
yeah.
Handbook.
The
Yeah.
ooh, I said go to the ooh.
The
Yes,
ooh, exactly. That's a first step. But I can
right.
tell you, I can give you a whole talk about that forever.
Oh, I would,
It's
yeah,
good, bad,
for
and the
sure.
ugly.
Right, right. Maybe for another day.
Yeah.
Well, I'd love to check in with you down the road, see what you're up to, and when your book rolls out, have you back on to share that if you like.
Oh, I'd love it. Love it. Yes.
Okay. All right,
Yes.
Shell. With that, I really just want to say have a great week. Thank you for being on the show. Thank you for sharing the work you're doing.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, hope this is another tool for your toolbox, everyone. Be sure to check it out. Until next time, take care.
Thank you.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.